you see the comeback of a Kingpin being a success?
Yeah, I see Owen having a comeback. I mean, he already is. He did this interview recently with a very, very prominent podcast, and it became the most popular interviews this person had ever done in like 6+ years of interviewing. He's such a smart entrepreneurial guy. He's such a hustler that, like, even in prison, like he was a great book partner because he kept me in check. He was just like already planning 10 steps ahead for post-publication after the story came out, doing all this stuff, and yeah, he's coming back.
My name is Owen Hansen, also known as the California Kid.
So obviously you have a published book now, right? You were in prison and now you have a book that you're selling to anybody that wants to buy it with an actual cover, and it was published properly and edited. On it is Owen Hansen and Alex Cody Foster.
I first heard about Owen's story through his agent, Van, who was a film producer, and Van was very much doing the film TV side of this story, and he hit me up. I forget how Van found me.
Obviously, when you're in federal prison, it's hard for you to write a book. The whole time I was in there, I was taking notes on my life. I thought to myself, why did I end up here? Like, what did I do wrong? Like, where did it start, right? And you're thinking like, okay, I probably got to go back to my childhood, right? Because I personally feel like that's where it started.
And my parents separated when I was 8 years old. My dad decided to keep me in the city of Redondo Beach, where I ended up growing up my whole life. My mother left me at 8 years old with my sister, and I would see her once a year, so it was a real hard time, growing up not having a mother.
When my mother and father separated, and I was such a young kid, 8 years old, seeing my mother leave, and I'm like, wow. I cried, and I remembered to myself, like, my dad's like, son, we don't cry. You're a man, you're a boy. We don't do that in this family. And I stopped real quick because I was embarrassed, because I looked up to my father. And I think that's where you got to take the story, because someone that loses their mother is not the same as losing your father. When I got that done, and I was reading the chapter over and over again, I was like, wow, maybe this is where it all started, Maybe this is where I felt that abandonment, many more chapters, you'll see I had that abandonment many times with girlfriends, with teammates, with people in life. And for me, that's how I can relate as much as to, someone on the street that has a similar story to mine. But when I started writing, I never even thought it was going to be something that people would want to buy. I just wanted to do it for me, for myself. And I finally reached out to a friend of mine that was helping me with my life rights and trying to get the story out there. And I said, hey, we need to find a ghostwriter. I said, I'm ready to finally tell my story. I've been in prison 6 years at the time, and I just started taking notes on everything. So he came and visited me in United States Lompoc, and he says, okay, well, I'm going to start looking for one. Make him an offer he can't refuse. I said, offer him 40% of the book. I said, at the end of the day, we don't have any money to give him. The government seized all my assets, so offer him 40%. He showed him the Rolling Stones article. He sold him the Vice magazine article, LA Times. It's been publicized everywhere. He got a lot of attention with the NFL players that were indicted on it, a lot of celebrities, private investigators that were FBI agents at one time. So, it got a lot of notoriety, and it was a big story.
But yeah, they reached out to me, and it was kind of funny because he wouldn't tell me who his client was. It was very hush-hush. And I remember in one of my first meetings with his agent, I was like, well, I get he's in prison. I get he's serving a sentence for some notorious shit. But like, I kind of have to know who it is so I can know what the story is. So then, Owen called me on the phone, and it's really funny. It's kind of like a cool bar trick or something if you're with your friends and you get a phone call from someone like Owen. And it says, this is a call from a federal prison.
This call is from a federal prison.
And then you have to go through this whole thing to accept it. And anyway, I remember that first time I got that phone call, and it said that, and my friends were in the same room, and they were just like, everybody's eyebrows went up, and they're like, who's calling Alex,
And he sold him on my my comeback. We spent many hours, almost I'd say we've been writing this book for nearly 3 years. And the book started in the federal prison. I was in my 6x8 cell going crazy. We were locked down for 9 months. And, it's from this USC golden boy to becoming an international drug kingpin.
What was it like working with the Kingpin?
Working with a kingpin was interesting. I had previously worked with, I guess what you would call notorious and dangerous individuals like John McAfee. After that whole experience and all the crazy shit that I went through with him, I had just one rule for my clients. It was that if I'm going to write your book, I can't be assassinated. So I had to talk to Owen about that and say, what's the likelihood that if I write this book with you, that there will be a target painted on my back by the cartel? And when I felt very comfortable that there wouldn't be, I started working with him, and again, it was interesting. An experience unlike any I'd had before, that's for sure, because I never met, first of all, I never met a drug kingpin. Secondly, never met a nice drug kingpin, and that's what Owen was, not anymore, hopefully.
Did you find the prison lockdowns and monitored phone times slowed down the process?
Yeah, because Owen was in prison, the interview phase of the book writing process was largely interrupted and drawn out because he could only talk in like 15-minute intervals.
After a couple margaritas, I said, we got a couple lines of business that we do over there, but, mostly the gambling. Just still not sure what these guys were yet. I'm going to lose you about 10 seconds till I'll call you right back.
All right, buddy.
The way we did it was off the prison phone. We had 15 minutes a day, and I would call him every day for 2 years straight. And I would tell him my story and how it all happened. So every time we call, he knows he's got to record for that 15 minutes, and it took a long time.
That was at Milo's Greek restaurant in South Beach. So I don't know if you want me to keep going, I can.
Yeah, if you have more time.
So, yeah, I got plenty of time. So that evening we met at this hot spot.
Every time I write notes about the book, about a chapter, for instance, I have to send it through the United States Postal Service. Some prison guard sat behind his desk and read everything to make sure I wasn't, planning any kind of escape or doing anything illegal. By the time he would get the mail, it would take 2 to 3 weeks sometimes.
What were the phone calls in prison with him like? Were they hectic because you only had 15 minutes? Like, are you just scrambling to get as much information to him at once? Like, walk us through a little more detail about what those phone calls were like.
The problem with the phone calls in prison is you never know when we're going to get locked down. I remember one time I was on the prison phone with him, and all of a sudden there was a guy getting stabbed in the bathroom. And they're like, lock down. The guards are running. You got like 20 guards running to go stop this stabbing. And I'm like, hey, Alex, we're probably going to get locked down. I'm going to have to call you back. It's probably going to be a couple weeks. So I remember hanging up that call, and I'm like, man, like we were right in the momentum of a good story. So I get back in my cell, we get locked down, and I'm just like, okay, I got to continue. So I'm writing the continuation of my story that I was just telling him on the phone, because I know for the next month we're probably going to be locked down in our cells eating box lunches. So I'd go and I'd write down and I'd continue the story, and I would put it in my envelope, put my stamp on it, and mail it to Alex.
Has there ever been times you had no contact with Owen in prison? What was the longest period of time, and how did you deal with that?
Yeah, whenever Owen would be on lockdown, or I think one time he went to solitary confinement because there was a phone discovered in his cell, and yeah, I remember Van, his agent, had reached out to me, and he was like, Owen's on lockdown for like a month, so you're not going to hear from him. Owen and I were kind of arguing a little bit because I was so busy with so many projects, and I wasn't giving our project the time that I should have given it, and I remember when Van told me, like, yeah, he's on lockdown, you're not going to hear from him for a couple weeks. I was like, sweet, vacation, fuck it. But no, I love Owen. It was just funny because, yeah, there would be times that we would stress each other out, but we love working together. Owen is one of the most interesting kingpins, because when you think like cartel, drug kingpin, that sort of thing, you don't typically envision like a well-spoken, well-dressed Caucasian male who plays sports. That's not usually the drug kingpin cliche that one thinks of.
What was that like, pen and paper? Like, did writing become like kind of a relief for you, or like a time passer? Like, did you find yourself writing a lot?
Man, I wrote everybody. I wrote ex-girlfriends from 20 years ago. I wrote anybody and everybody because it was so therapeutic.
Lost all of his money, lost everything, and he was on the inside. He was in prison. Realizing the depth and humanity in that story that came through him from jail, from prison, it made the writing of it so much more important.
Because at the end of the day, you're so lonely. Prison makes you numb. If you get a piece of mail in prison, it's like the best feeling. It's like someone giving you a Rolls Royce for Christmas, and that piece of mail means a lot because someone went out of their day to write you and to put a stamp. Like, people, when you're out, you don't realize how fast life is. I know how fast it is because I'm here now. But for someone to write you a letter by hand or type it and actually put it in an envelope and go get a stamp, because you got to remember, who uses stamps nowadays? No one uses stamps. So you have to go to the post office, get a stamp, and mail it. It's a lot of work. So I don't expect anyone to write me, but when I received, a letter, and someone sent me a letter with pictures, or if it was my birthday, I just wanted you to have this picture, and you're looking, you're like, wow, it's like you go down memory lane. You think of the past with that person, with that friend of yours, and it brings back so many memories. But it's such a good feeling to receive mail, to be able to communicate through a pen and paper or a pencil and paper.
One time we kind of had an argument because he kept pushing me to get this one deliverable done in a quick turnaround. And I said, Bud, I have other projects, I'm traveling, I'm very, very busy. He said, well, you got to remember, it's just me alone in this 8x10 cell. He said, that's my life. So this book is the most important thing in it. And it was when he told me that it was a big wake up call. And I was like, geez, yeah, I'm like, this is a human life that we're talking about. So it's a whole different level of importance and empathizing with a subject.
Was it tough at first, writing all that vulnerable stuff, and then having a guy like Alex be on the project, reading all these deep things into your life? Was that hard at first?
Yeah, it was hard. It was like a therapist, right? So I'm telling him, I'm spilling my guts. I'm telling him about my mother. I'm telling him about my sister leaving and seeing her cry, sucking her thumb. And I'm telling her, and I'm like, this is a total stranger, right? And I'm like, man, it kind of feels good, right? After a few hours of it, you're like, wow, it feels like I'm talking to a therapist. Because he's understanding, he's writing it down, and he sees the vision. He sees where this thing went wrong.
Okay.
So tell me about how the FBI and the New South Wales Crime Force infiltrated Craig Hauser on the yacht party.
That's a question I really don't know.
Okay.
They were able to realize I was doing business with him after they found the $700,000, and they saw that I got hired an attorney by the name Michael Croak. Him and I would do the Melbourne Cup in Sydney and be on the boats. But so he was always on the boats, and I think the FBI knew that through the New South Wales police force.
Have you met Owen in person yet?
I haven't met Owen yet. I haven't, which is crazy to think because we worked together for 4 years, and I probably know more about him than a shrink.
So, I talked to Alex the day I got out of federal prison and was on my way to the halfway house, and he congratulated me and said, welcome home. And he says, I can't wait to have a cold beer or a cold Diet Coke with you. And I look forward to that day when I get released into society, and I'm finally out of the Bureau prison halfway house, and I get to meet Alex face to face.
Yeah, I haven't met him yet, but I'm excited to.
Do you like having your name on projects like this instead of being the ghostwriter?
Yeah, it's an interesting question posed to ghostwriters. I always get asked, or I used to get asked, does it bother you that you don't have credit for the work that you do? And it didn't bother me because I didn't tie my ego to the projects. I just like to write what I loved to work on.
Alex has been part of a lot of major projects, but publicly, he's only really known to have worked on 2 projects, and one of them is yours. How does that make you feel?
It felt very honorable to have Alex part of my project. I liked his style of writing. When he writes, you feel like that's my story. Yeah, some of the words he's using are obviously his words, but he makes you feel like you're at that scene. So when I got in for my first time ever playing football, a game I've never played in my life, and Alex sets the scene up so perfectly. When you read that, you feel like you're at the Coliseum. And for me, that's what a reader wants. They want to feel like they're in the event with me.
It does matter to me to have my name attached to these projects. It's important now to have that sort of recognition.
At what moment did you know that you wanted to publish this book and make it something that people could read about?
You know, when I was in prison, I said to Alex, I said, why don't you look for a publisher, see if we can get anyone to greenlight this thing and pick it up. You know, I wasn't thinking anybody was gonna join, you know, someone that's in prison and tell the story. But Alex did a good job. He reached out to Turner Publishing, and they said, we're in.
We're doing a docuseries right now that's in the pre-development, as well as a book through Turner Publishing called The California Kid.
You know, we'll give you guys an advance to write this, and that'll help with your commissary, and that'll help with Alex's expenses to, you know, take my calls and write this thing.
I'm sure that you and Alex have become pretty good friends throughout this process. Is there anything that he's taught you to help you, you know, kind of acclimate back to society?
You know, the advice Alex gave me, he says the best way to tell your story is be honest about everything. And, you know, there's no sugarcoating. There's no hiding. You know, I'm not fabricating things. I'm just speaking the honest truth. And he says people want to hear honesty, even though you're this international drug kingpin, and many people may hate you. But at the end of the day, you're being honest. You did your time, so let's tell your story and let's tell it the right way. You know, I came from that kid trying to chase that dream, trying to be someone that I wasn't. You know, I wanted to fit in with the kids from USC. I wanted to fit in later on in life with my friends that went to the NFL. So maybe people have something in common when they read my book. And at the end of the day, you see how resilient I am through this whole journey. And you see how my life was a dance. Sometimes I led, sometimes I followed. But at the end of the day, I learned how to move or wiggle. And I think people will find that amusing at sometimes.
Owen is optimistic about doing a second book called My Life Behind the Fence. Is this true?
Yeah, there are two parts to this story. There's the first part, the overarching one, and then there's the second, which is you in prison, and it's everything that you've been through just behind bars. And he's always wanted to tell that side of the story. That's what we're doing. We're writing book 2. Probably, you know, get started like next couple of weeks.
That was it, man. And here I am now.
And how long was the sentence for? 26?
Yeah, 21 and a half years, 255 months.
Holy shit.
Yeah, so that didn't, obviously, that took 2.5, 3 years later. And if we ever do a part 2, we'll talk about it from that point on, because it gets interesting. There's Australia, me flying back to Australia, extradition, fighting a life sentence over there. There's a lot of stuff that we can still go into, but I think we just end the book here.
What's up, brother? Maddie, what up, baby? Dude, fuck, crazy.
I should have been your mule, dude.
And I got goosebumps right now, man. Look at those. Just thinking about the days we used to walk out this tunnel. That's good content. California Kid here, man. Our winner this week is for Marcus. Hey, I want to thank you for joining Comeback of a Kingpin. I wrote you a personal message. I signed it from the California Kid, Owen Hansen, number 88. And I'm giving you a little bicep workout so you can keep working out. I know you want to push yourself. So you got hammer curls, preacher curls, tricep blast, tricep extensions, and skull crushers. All right, buddy? Keep pushing and we'll get there. Fight on.